Giancarlo, welcome. Thanks for being here with us today. Really excited to record the podcast with you today, Giancarlo. We've obviously had a chat a wee while ago, and you're clearly a very revered and experienced technology leader. You've been head of engineering. You've assumed multiple leadership positions in different businesses. So I'm sure there's a huge wealth of knowledge that you've got to impart onto us today, and really interested, quite frankly, to hear a little bit more about your story, your background to date. If we could start, if you'd be so kind, just to give us a little bit of a whistle-stop tour of your background and ultimately how you've arrived into the position you have in tech leadership. That would be a great place for us to start.
Yeah, sure. Let's start from the beginning. A very long time ago, I started more than 20 years ago as a software developer, and it was very old-style technical stack. So I was working in the financial industry for developing contribution system for the financial markets, especially for the derivative stuff. So everything was very old-style, like C++, SQL Server, the old-style technology. And I had quite a good run in software development for the financial industry, first at an Italian investment bank, then for one of the global software providers for financial industry, for trading platform. And that is when I moved to London as well from Italy, working for List, which is a software house. And actually, when I was in London, I jumped to the other side of the fence because I went from software development into asset management for some hedge funds in the, US and UK funds. And I was working on, that was the first exposure that I have to machine learning. Back at that time was 2007, so a long time ago. And we were developing actually financial models to trying to predict the behavior of financial market and trying to exploit the misbehavior of financial markets. So it was actually, we started with US and European stocks, then we moved into the derivatives. And we also had more statistical languages like MATLAB, Mathematica, and all the tools that were very actually good for modeling data. And so that was quite a long run because I went from 2007 to 2015. I developed proprietary models for high frequency and mid frequency, so to exploit financial markets in a very short time frame from 2 to 45 seconds of holding position. And it was quite intense, was a mix of research and applying research into the financial market. So 2015, I felt like it was the end of that particular journey. So I moved from the financial industry into the first role in data science. So that was my first experience in pure data science and artificial intelligence, because I was leading the mobile application department for Garmin, specifically focused on actually the mobile for nautical systems, so sort of ways for the navigation system on the seaside and lake and rivers. So it was quite intense because we were doing a lot of different stuff for sales, marketing, customer support, churn analytics models, so typical data science and classic ML stuff. I did that for a couple of years, and then I tried to set up my own startup for doing recommender system as a service. So I was leading a team both from technical and business point of view. It was very good run from a technical point of view, but I misjudged the financial operation of it. So the startup, as many startups, failed at a certain point. So after 1 year, we were out of the market, and I took the leadership at that point for Entity Data, the global Japanese consultancy firm, for leading the data science and artificial intelligence team. And it was actually to set up the team first in Italy from scratch. So to create, to create the whole team, hire the technical experts and getting clients on board and this kind of stuff. So it was more a managerial role, still hands-on, but of course was more to manage people and projects and the strategy of the artificial intelligence for entity data. I did for Italy, then I was doing as a global position for MLOps and artificial intelligence. And then 2023 was my going back into startup, because I was the CTO and head of artificial intelligence for a startup called Quantia, which basically is a low-code, no-code platform for developing artificial intelligence solutions. So I was responsible for the engineering part, backend mainly, and the creation of models for artificial intelligence. And it was a 1 year project that was completed at the end of 23, and then actually I had a short run for Impact AI as head of AI engineering, helping them to set the team, and now I'm actually up for a new venture which is coming very soon.
Wow, fantastic. Well, thank you for that. Really, really interesting. I love the way that your career has kind of spanned different sectors, different sizes and maturity of business as well. I guess that's given you a really nice breadth of knowledge and experience, sort of frame of reference to those different types of companies. So yeah, fantastic. In your career thus far, it seems like you're still incredibly technically competent, but you also had roles that have been focused on leadership as well and management. So what was your thought process insofar as when you chose to move more into leadership? You know, why did you choose to do that? And guess what have been the pros and the cons of both?
Yeah, I think this is quite an important moment for all people coming from technical background, and it can be also very tricky, because of course it's a huge shift from technical expertise into leadership or many managerial roles, so to lead people and strategy. I think that it's kind of important to assess if you want to do that first, because of course there's a lot of people that they can do, they can continue on the engineering role, so very technical hands-on role, and still continue to grow and to take more responsibility, and this is perfectly fine. And there are people that are more keen to go into the leadership role. For me, actually, it was kind of very smooth transition, because at a certain point it was like very obvious for me that it was not only the technical part, but I was also interested in leading projects and teams, and trying to also I would say teach people my experience and trying to influence them with my strategy and this kind of stuff. So to me, it was a very smooth transition. Still, I think that for many technical people, it's important to maintain the hands-on parts of the technical part. This was very clear to me at every stage. So I never quit the coding, although I would say I reduced the amount of time coding drastically in the last 7-8 years. What is important, I think, is very important to acknowledge that you want to go into leadership position for two main reasons. The first one is that to be in a leadership position, you really need to be into that, because of course you are influencing people, you are influencing their career and ultimately their lives. So this is very important. And the second part is that if you are going into a pure leadership position, there is no coming back, because the technology is going very fast, and then it would be very hard to catch up. You can do that, but of course it's very hard.
Yes.
So I think that you need to acknowledge those stuff, and you need to be very clear in what the expectations are on your side. I know a lot of people that they stayed in the engineering part and they're very happy about that. And I know a lot, and I know some people that they went into leadership and they are not happy at all, so they want to go back. So you need to acknowledge what you want to do from your career and your life in general. And then the decision will be very easy. From my point of view, it was very smooth, but I always say that basically I want to keep both sides. Of course, I'm more on the leadership part now than the technical part, but still I code and I do research, and I actually try to stay up to the technology, which is very difficult at this moment in in the artificial intelligence space.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a really key point that you've made there, that I think that as technology is starting to evolve, obviously exponentially quickly, I think there's more onus and emphasis on technology leaders making a really concerted effort to try and keep up, even if not necessarily cutting code all day and sort of actually practicing the software engineering side of it, to certainly to keep up to speed with the latest concepts and trends. Because, like I said, it's just, even in my 16 years of doing this job, this last sort of 2-3 years has been such a unbelievable kind of fast-paced evolution of tech. And I think as a leader, that's a really key important part of it. So that's really interesting to understand your insight on that. What do you feel are, in your experience of having taken these leadership roles now, what do you feel are the other really important qualities of a strong data and technology leader?
Yeah, I think there are some technical and some hard and some soft skill. I will start with the soft skill. I think that you need to listen a lot to different opinions, and you need to be very open in terms of understanding what other people think about, not only about the technology, but also about their feelings and their understanding of the business and what they want to achieve and this kind of stuff. So this is very important to me. I think that it's very important to understand the priorities of teams that you lead, or in general also opinion coming from other teams or other departments or other people. So this is very important. The second thing, because this is a very consuming job, I will say. You have to keep up with a lot of new stuff, and so it's very important also to understand how people feel in this fast-paced environment. So this is very important at all. And on a mix of soft and hard skill, I think that technical leaders, they always talk with very experienced technical people, so people that are on the on the details of the technology. So
Yeah.
this doesn't mean that you need to be at the same level, because of course it's impossible. You have a broad environment you are overlooking, so you of course it will be impossible to know all the details, but you need to be able to talk with those people at the same level, and trying to actually be a good sparring partner for them, meaning that basically they have some doubts, so they're coming to you, you are just explaining some stuff, or you are just asking more questions to help them solve the problem.
Mm.
In general, when technical people, they come to technical leaders, they already know the solution, but they don't know, so they just need
Yeah.
to have this conversation to help them solving stuff.
Mm.
So I think those are the most important things. One other one is to actually be curious about environment and new and innovation in general, because of course you need also to prioritize and select which one is the most promising and which one you want to address, and you want to spend your time and team's time and company's money to address those new technologies. So this is very important, and so you need to be curious, and those are the most important things, in my opinion.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. Would agree with a lot of those. I think again, one of the key components I see of strong leaders that have people that have that ability to coach rather than to tell. Definitely, like you say, and sort of allow those people to kind of come to their own solutions. Absolutely. And yeah, I totally agree that curiosity piece. Fostering that environment where people feel like they can bring new suggestions to the table. And how do you go about that as a leader, ensuring that you kind of build that environment and that culture where people feel like they can remain curious, and how do you sort of go about that whole prioritization side of things, like I say, about where you would decide to invest resources and spend company money?
Yeah, I think you have to actually be very transparent on the process, and and this is a long process, of course, to I will say create an environment where there is no blaming, because curiosity and innovation comes with a cost. So you are taking some paths, and sometimes those paths are not good enough, so you have to pivot or completely change the topic of your research. So I think it's very important that people feel safe in making experiments. So if the experiments are not good, no one is finger pointing or blaming for those stuff. So this is the first thing. The second thing is even in this experiment experimentation, you need to apply some startup concepts. So you have to fail very quickly and to acknowledge that that part is not going, anywhere. So you have to move into another topic. And this is very important to actually constantly check where you are with your research and this kind of stuff. So this also helps to actually reduce the loss for the company, saying, okay, we're doing this experiment, it's not working, we're moving into another one, probably was not the right timing, was not the right approach, and so on. So this is very important, and I think when people feel safe, they also feel more creative and more engaged. So it's a win-win because they can, of course, experiment in a more relaxed way, which doesn't mean that they are not putting effort in that, just that they feel safe in the experiments.
Yeah, I love that. I guess it's a real fine line, isn't it? Balancing those two things, like say, creating that safe space where people feel like they can genuinely be creative and innovate, but constantly keeping a finger on the pulse to make sure that we're going down the right avenue. So yeah, I love that answer. I think that's absolutely spot on. Okay, fantastic. Well, one of the things that sort of struck me in your introduction, but also I know we spoke about in our last conversation, is obviously you've worked in industries such as the financial services industry, where they're very fast-paced, sort of dynamic markets. And we spoke a little bit in our last conversation around topics such as drift theory in machine learning models. And I'm sure you will do a far better job than I of explaining that. But just in terms of my understanding, so drift theory with regards to machine learning is the concept where obviously the statistical properties of the data that's used to train the model can change over time, which therefore then can affect the performance of the model, which could sometimes lead to a degradation of the model's performance, which obviously could be especially relevant in situations like real world markets like financial services and social media and so on, where things are ever changing. So talk us through a little bit about it'd be really interesting to understand how you could explain drift theory and how it applies to machine learning models in the real world.
Yeah, first of all, you explain very well. So it's very clear the way you explain. So thank you for that. I think that drift is of course is one of the main topic in machine learning and artificial intelligence. There are different kind of drift for the machine learning models. So there is the input drift or the data drift for the input to change, or you have the concept drift for the output to change. So in case some of the behavior of the user change and the model is not able to actually track those behavior anymore, so you need to retrain the model or to fine tune or to take action in general. With the advent of language model, which are very popular nowadays, there is also one other topic that I'm researching, which is the context drift. So where basically you are talking with a language model or you're chatting with a language model and the user, so you are going to change the context or to shift the context, and the model is not able to track those context shift anymore. So it's going to hallucinate and giving you answers that are not in line with your expectation. For what concerned my research on drift, I started years ago when it was not very popular, to be honest, because I had a real world problem and the model was not performing well. So I started researching into that. And I started with very classic and traditional method, like the feature distribution. So to detect if there was some change in the input variables for the distribution, and trying to address those for retraining the model or to take additional action. Lately, in the last 3 years, I started researching on a different approach, which I'm still doing it, and I will be able to release a research on this in the second quarter of this year. Actually, the approach is to create perturbation and deformation of the vector spaces created by the machine learning model. And this deformation of the space of the vector space is kind of creating the condition to actually address the drift problem, because when this is the form seems compared to the original vector space, of course, it means that there are differences in both the data and the concept drift. So this is the moment where you need to retrain or to fine tune the model. And this applies also very well to the context drift, because the vector space is created by the vectors themselves. So when the vectors are going to be deformed or the perturbation is in action, the perturbed vector space is just because there is a new context, sorry, in action. So you need to actually address the question in a different way. Of course, drift is a never-ending problem. I think that we are going to talk about this a lot, but it's kind of one of the crucial aspects of the machine learning, because of course, language models are very good now in text, in question and answering, in chatting with humans, but there is one thing that they are lacking, which is basically to quickly shift into different contexts. We as human are very good in that. So we start the conversation, then we shift gradually or drastically into a new context, and we are perfectly able to do that because we have a whole set of reasoning which is not applied to the language model at this stage. So I think this is one of the key aspects for making the language model more human-like.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, really great point, and reminds me of a conversation I had quite recently with a chap called Peter Voss, actually, who's a founder of a cognitive AI focused business, and we were having this conversation, this debate about, you know, when the term AI was coined, you know, back in the 1920s, the whole premise of it was to try and replicate human behavior, and obviously we've, you know, through various reasons, we've got the rise of, you know, ubiquitous LLMs like ChatGPT now, which are clearly in industry, you know, very successful, making a lot of money, and it feels like everybody's kind of pulling on that thread of generative AI, and you know, because ultimately it's very powerful and, you know, can be used in lots of contexts to drive a lot of value for business, but like you said, it doesn't, and it will be a long way before that approach will actually ever take into account the context situation, like you said, and the whole pursuit of cognitive AI is exactly that. It's being able to solve problems in the same way that humans do, and how we interact with external stimulus, and connect those two things together. So I think it will be a really interesting part of the market, sort of see how those two converge at some point. Yeah.
Yeah, no, there are a lot of expectations, of course, around those language models, and sometimes the expectation are probably too high. We believe that language models are able to mimic, you know, our human behavior or human reasoning, which is not the case. Of course, we are still way, you know, out of that specific reasoning that we have. We are very good in that because we are connected, and we are basically engaging with different contexts at the same time, and we are very good at shifting in that, which is not property of the language model at all. They can do it, but of course you need to set with prompting a very good direction to the language model to understand the new concept, which is not the case with humans. I mean, we can start a conversation with artificial intelligence ending up in traveling or wine or food or anything else, and it's very smooth. For the language model is kind of different.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. But no, going back to your point around some of the research you've got coming out in the second half of this year around drift theory, that sounds really interesting. Have you is that sort of in sort of R&D stage, or have you had any kind of real world success stories around that new approach in terms of how applying that drift detection and adaptation strategy has kind of made a big difference?
Yeah, I'm in the phase now of testing on the real world data. So I made the theory, and it was quite a long process. And I've created the hypothesis in the last couple of years, and so I then created the code on top of that. And now I'm testing with the real world data. So I'm just actually getting new fresh data never seen from the model into the stuff, and actually, I'm now in the phase where the model are selecting which space they are using for that specific reasoning to understand if there is a shift in the data or in the context and so on. For the time being, simulation are quite promising, but of course, to be robust, I need to feed a lot of data into this system, and it's quite a long process.
Sure, I can imagine. I can imagine. Well, keep us up to speed with it, and yeah, let us know how you get on. Look forward to seeing that when it's published. I'm sure it'll be very insightful indeed. Okay, fantastic. Well, let's talk a little bit more about again, you as a leader, because I think you've got this really informed perspective to be able to share a lot of value here. You know, being from a technical background yourself, and again, I think in our last conversation we spoke about when, you know, as a leader, often of a AI startup or scale up, you know, you can often inherit, but find yourself running really kind of heterogeneous teams where you have a whole kind of diverse range of skills and experiences within you know, within the department or within the function. So talk us through a little bit about some of your experience as a leader, and you know, how you go about engaging and running those types of teams.
Yeah, that is is a very good question. And I started leading a heterogeneous team when I was in my financial career, because actually in hedge funds there are very different skills in the team. So you have software developers, and you have engineers, and you have financial experts. So everyone actually has different background and different kind of skills. So I mean, what I can say first of all is not easy because of course sometimes they speak different languages, different jargons, and they also come from different kind of objectives. So it's kind of very difficult to make them working for a shared goal. So I think that the secret here, at least one that it worked for me, it was like to be very transparent and sharing all the information for them. I would say forge the team in order to share the information as much as possible, and to make clear that different point of view are actually good for the team and are not a problem. So that people, they can learn from other skills and competencies, rather than being blocked or being, you know, not up to speed for because they're coming from different background. It's not an easy process because, especially in the financial industry, then I will go into other industry in a second, but in financial industry, it's not very easy because people are very, I would say, obsessed about the performance, and they would like to achieve personal performance rather than team performance, because that's the objective in the financial industry at the end of the day. So of course you need to actually share the fact that a team goal is also a personal goal, so that they can have personal gain from the team gain. In other industries, is easier because people are more keen to understand, you know, different point of view and different perspective. So, for example, in my consultancy years experience, the team were very large, and data scientists with data engineers, with traditional software engineers, business analysts. So everyone is a different angle. But the secret sauce, I think, is always the same: is to share and to make, I would say, plan situation where people, they can share their knowledge and learn from other people's knowledge. So I would say ceremonies where they share a specific topic and they explain why they get into that, and what was the background of that specific topic, and how they approach it. And those moments, I think, they're very good also for team building, because people, they tend to understand from where other people are coming from and what they want to achieve. So they share a lot of also personal experience about that, because of course all the professional experience they carry also personal part of life. So that was quite keen, quite good. So I think that is it's not an easy process, to be honest with you, because sometimes it's not easy. Also because you know, the work is very fast, is very quick, so people they don't have much time, but then they realize that this is good for them as well, to learn new stuff and to share what they know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great answer, and I think that is a real key part of the leader's role, is to designate that time where people can feel like they can share. Because not only does it give people, a voice and obviously an opportunity to come and present their perspective. But I think there's also a lot of value in, certainly what I say in a lot of high performing teams where there's a lot of learning at peer level, rather than it all coming from the leader. And, I always say, I think the leader shouldn't be necessarily the smartest person in the room. And, it shouldn't always be, when I'm sort of talking to my team, it shouldn't always be my perspective on things. It's the right way of doing things, because at the end of the day, like I say, the whole world that we're living in is evolving so quickly that just being able to understand how other people would approach that problem, and I think it does really build that kind of strong, cohesive team, like you say, irrespective of skill set, where people feel like they're very bought in and united. So yeah, I think that's a great point. To that end, with regards to how you build these teams, I'd say you obviously, when it comes to the actual nature of the job, technically, you're going to be looking for different skill sets. I understand, between a software engineer, a data engineer, and a data scientist. But irrespective of the technical skills, do you hire for people any particular core characteristics or traits that sort of overarch the technical skills alone? How do you go about assessing talent and people that potentially come to join the team?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of CV information per se. So of course they are important, and you get a sense of what they've done and what the skill set are, and those are important. But I think that I tend to assess characteristic of people during the interview, and what I love is reasoning skills. So I tend to do some sort of share reasoning on a real world problem and trying to understand how they react to a specific problem. And also I learn a lot of stuff in that process, because of course it's a conversation, and typically it's very good because I also learn a new point of view. And another skill that I'm always looking for is the curiosity. So to actually trying to solve those real world problem in I would say not a typical way, not actually in trying to find something which is different from the common perspective. So this is very important to me. And I also think that creating especially large teams is very important, that people they fit into the team culture, which doesn't mean that they always need to be the same. It's actually it's the opposite, but they need to be open to other people's opinions, to be able to actually listen to the other people, to understand what other people say and think, and to be able to share their point of view. So those are the most important things to me. Of course, for certain role, the technical skills are very important, and especially if you are in a certain level of seniority. But if you go to very junior people or to leader people, of course, you need to also understand if they fit the culture and if they are able to make an impact at a certain point.
Yeah, fantastic. I think it definitely rings true there with, like I say, a lot of the characteristics that we're looking for. That sort of being that team player. Obviously feeds into creating that environment that you were talking about, and making sure that you keep that sort of sacrosanct, because very often it can only take one wrong hire or somebody that just doesn't get that way of working, and then it can upset the apple cart and totally change the dynamic within a team that you spend a long time establishing. So I think that's a really sensible way to focus on things. Okay, superb. Well, so the last couple of questions then, as we finish off, I've obviously we've spoken, both of us, about how the world of tech and I suppose we're talking specifically about AI here is evolving just exponentially quickly. Quite an open-ended question, but when you look at where we are in the world today and how this landscape is evolving, what are you most excited about, I suppose, in the world of tech moving forward?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things that I'm very excited. The first one is this evolution in the generative AI. This is very promising. I mean, although I don't fully share the expectation with where we are at this stage, but I think that this is going to be very effective in the coming years and is going to reshape many industries and our personal life as well. Because of course, we can do a lot of stuff with generative AI, and we can, of course, simplify our lives as well. So this is very exciting to me, and the research itself around generative AI is very interesting because it is actually, especially for language, is a mix of different kind of areas, like of course the mathematical part and the software development, but also the linguistic part, and how we use the word, how we shape our vocabulary, and the way we talk. So this is very exciting. Related to artificial intelligence, I think it's very exciting, the integration of AI within traditional legacy system, how this will get artificial intelligence at scale, so enterprise grade, working in a very sophisticated and at the same time very old systems that we are still relying on. If we think about the financial industry, I mean, of course, banking is a very I would say linked to the traditional system, and still they are doing a lot of stuff in artificial intelligence. So the integration is very, it's not easy, but at the same time it's very exciting, because of course you need different systems to work together. So I think those are the most exciting things, but I think that also making, in a certain way, artificial intelligence more human-like, so getting toward AGI is something that is very interesting. My personal opinion is that we are very early stage, so there's a long way to go, but yet, I mean, this is super exciting.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think some great points there, and I agree. It's one of those things, isn't it? AI, the more you lift the lid on it and the more you understand, even though the advances are just mind-blowing really of what's happened in the last few years, the more you realize there's still a lot of work to do. And it's going to be a long time before we get to that true AGI place. But yeah, incredibly interesting landscape. So fantastic. Well, look, Giancarlo, really enjoyed the conversation today. I think it's been very insightful, and yeah, you've been a fantastic guest. So thank you very much for coming on and sharing your story with us. I like to end every podcast with asking the same question, if you'd be so kind to indulge me, which is, throughout your career, it could be work related or personal related, whatever it may be, what's your one favorite piece of advice that you've ever received that you'd care to share with your fellow human?
Yeah, I think it is, I mean, this case is both personal and professional, which is to never stop investigating things and trying to be curious about stuff. I mean, I think it's both for personal and professional life, even if sometimes it's hard, because of course it's not a linear trajectory of your personal and professional life, but it's worth it, because you're going to being exposed to many different perspectives and many different angles that you will probably not come across in a linear life.
Yeah,
but it's definitely worth it, even if it's tiring sometimes, and you believe it going into dead ends, but they are not. They are just another part of your background and experience. So never stop investigating things.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a really great piece of advice, because not only does that curiosity constantly keep I suppose your problem solving brain sharp, very often you actually find that when you end up being curious about one thing and solving some issues in that area, whilst that might not necessarily lead to something at the time, you realize next time you're working on this thing over here, how those two things connect. And it's amazing how
That's right.
life does interconnect like that. So yeah, fantastic. I think it's a great way to end the episode. So yeah, all I want to say again is thank you very much for coming on the show. Really lovely to have you, and yeah, I look forward to keeping up to speed with your latest research that will be released later in the year. So you have to share that with us once it's live, and we'll hopefully be chatting again very soon.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.